That's okay.
All right. I'll just start with, I know Counselor McDonald is going to be absent this evening. Ralph?
Here.
And it looks like Counselor Hook is walking in the door as we speak. Luke? Counselor Ort?
Present.
Brent?
Here.
Counselor Quigley?
Here.
Counselor Patty?
Present.
Mayor Porter? And Tim.
Here.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to accept last night's minutes? So moved. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Counselor Patty, seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Those in favor? Since we're all here, we can just.
Aye.
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 Okay. So it says continue the budget review.
All right. There you go.
It's getting over this way. All right. Good evening, everyone. So we're going to start this evening with the request from last night's meeting to look at the options for increasing the hours for the code enforcement officer. So this morning I ran a couple different scenarios looking at what the cost would be for one full-time versus two part-time like we used to have. And the impact would be better on the budget if we just went back to the two part-timers and had it go that way, and then we can inch it up as we go, but it would still give us 40 hours. So this budget has two part-time people because they're not paying benefits. It's an extra almost 40,000 we're going to save from the benefits piece to not have the insurance, retirements, and all those things that come with it. So for two part-time people, this is the change that happens to planning. It increases the budget by 28,000. That's a combination of the extra staff person and all the payroll fees that come with that. And then also I increased the gas by 1,000 and an extra 500 for quote materials because we'd be working more hours. I'm assuming that we would need more to cover that. So there's the new budget. You have all this in front of you too, and I'll walk you through what you have. So that's what the change to the budget. And the next slide. Wake it up. So in order to balance the budget, so revenue's not changing in this situation, we're only changing expenditures. We reduce contingency by the 28,000. So that changes in this part of your budget to offset the difference for the additional half-time FTE. And then the next slide. So what happens to the 5-year projection, which is just important when you're building a budget, is to see in the long-term effects. The result of this is we're still, the one in your original budget is that for that 25, 26 year is still green, and it's still green now, but it's green reduced by 34,400 by that fourth year. So that's the effect of the budget. And so a combination of where this landed and when I put it in with the full time, with full benefits for one person, this was my recommendation for a better option to get the hours increased and still give the budget time to see what revenues do in the future. So also in your packet, what this does is I gave you the line item detail of the planning's budget and of the non-operational part of the general fund, and also the expense side on your page 29 where you have the revenue and then the expenditures. This is the expense side because the general fund line item changed, even though we're still at $30 million budget, thank you, but you have that corrected page. So what's in front of you are the main corrections. There'll be a lot more corrections in the book, but this is all the main corrections that would affect if you choose to elect to increase the hours for the code enforcement position. Any questions on all of that information?
Chairman Lewis.
Counselor Patty. No, Quigley, please.
Thank you. I don't have a question so much as a thank you for looking into that for me, for us. My thought is after the light was shined on some of the questioning last night between the reporting, between the PD and between planning, it doesn't seem to be that we can really figure out how many incidents there are between those two numbers, and having the person in place now with a reporting system in place, and knowing what we discussed at the end of the night about the challenges of finding grant writing staff or participants to help us with that. I'm okay to let it slide, just my opinion, I'm okay to let it slide, to let it really fully vet, to see actually what the actual numbers are, and maybe address this at a later time. So that's just my take, but thanks for doing this.
Okay, you're welcome.
Chair Lewis. It's Councilor Patty.
Patty.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that sentiment. I think that the grant writer should actually be the priority here. And I would like to just see some kind of data policy like I shared last night in place for tracking this. And hopefully that'll be, we can see some more productive numbers next year. Not that this isn't helpful, just understanding that total a little bit better will be helpful for me, and making a motion to go ahead and increase this FTE. Thank you.
So you made a motion? No.
Okay, so we're ready to go?
Carry on.
Chair Lewis, for clarification,
Oh, Counselor Ort?
are we supposed to be making motions throughout the process? Or are
Yep,
we
you
waiting
can.
until the end after presentations?
We, at this point, are almost through, and I know that there was going to be some further discussion on the Chamber of Commerce proposal. So what I would do is we can wait to finish. We've got, I think, 2 more funds, and then the 5-year to get through, and then if there's further discussion and motions that potentially are wanting to be made, we can do it at that time.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
sure.
Okay, so for the facilities fund, this was set up before I started and was done to put money into a fund to help prepare for future buildings, but it also addresses our current, some of other buildings as well. So I did a 3% increase on the transfer into this fund for this budget. Grab the next one. And in this budget, we are completing the facility study. We are completing phase 1. We have completed phase 1 this fiscal year, and we have the rest of phase 2 and phase 3 to complete the facility study, which was one of the council's goals. So that will be completed in this fiscal year, in this budget and facilities. And this is, oh, I missed a piece. Oh, I guess I forgot. Oh, yeah, the theater's not on there. Oh. Oops. I forgot to tell you that we're also have to fix the wall of the theater. The wall on the outside is cracking the same way that it is at the city hall portion of the wall. The bigger cracks are in the theater side, which is budgeted for $40,000. It's coming out of this fund as well because it's one of the facilities and what that money is for. So your capital projects of the 130 is a combination of completing the facility study and getting that wall repaired on the theater side. And the city hall side, like I said before, is in the building maintenance because it's only $7,000. So that complete, and then the staffing is the same, and and then I also added in this budget $5,000 for general repair because when we had the emergency roof replacement this fiscal year for the theater, we tried to do some patching and repairing first, and we had to add that to the budget line item. So I added $5,000 there this year just in case something else comes up, because as we put the building maintenance together for what we're going to do with the other buildings the city owns. This will give us a little leeway just in case something else goes wrong. So that's why that $5,000 is there as well. So then that completes the facilities budget. Any questions on the facilities as I stumbled through that? Sorry. Okay.
Chair Lewis,
Counselor Ord?
So the facilities are the places that we own, correct?
Yes, it's the Star Theater, it's the Moose Lodge. It's really the two buildings that it takes care of,
Okay.
because all the rest of the buildings are within the funds that they're used.
Gotcha. So I had a question on the revenue side of the theater. It's showing, so I'm looking at the line item. So the theater, it's not showing any estimated or proposed rent from the theater?
So the revenue between the theater and the Moose Lodge, some of the revenue goes to facilities and some goes to the general fund. Before me, you guys, I guess council or somebody made a decision to split that up a little bit to help support. So I've just been following what was given to me. So the building rent that you see on the facilities is the $12,000. Now you're going to stretch my memory here really
Sorry, I don't-
quick. And then in the general fund, let me take a look. Where's my rents to miscellaneous? Okay. Is this-
I'm looking at the general fund.
Okay, so this is in the wrong spot. Of course, it would line up wrong. The 9,600 is the theater because the Moose Lodge is in the facilities with the 12,000 that's in the facility. So the 9,600 is the Star Theater. I'll need to fix that line item.
And where's the facilities line?
50 to the back. Go all the way to the back and find Fund 50. I need to fix that. It won't change the bottom line. The bottom line will stay the same, but I will correct the line item.
So the Moose Lodge, so what I'm getting at is I wanted to know how much the Moose Lodge, because it looked like the theater wasn't paying us, and then I wanted to know how much the Moose Lodge was paying us, and I wanted to make sure that we, I think Quigley alluded to this, but I want to talk about how much that rent is.
The Moose Lodge pays $500 a month, and the Star Theater pays whatever that 96 divided out is. And yes, that's, we made a note from Mr. Quigley's statement yesterday to relook at contracts, so that will definitely be something that will be happening in the future.
Do you know when the last time that the rents were raised on either of those?
Not in the 3 years that I have been here. $800 a month is the Star Theaters.
Chair Lewis,
Okay, thank you.
this is Counselor Patty. I just wanted to state real quick, I believe under Oregon Revised Statute now, Senate Bill 608 or something like that, this is all governed by CPI, how much we can actually raise their rent. So that's just something to consider here going forward as to what we can actually raise that amount to. And so I think it's dictated by like 7% plus the CPI. So now is a really good time to look at it considering what the CPI is.
Yes.
I don't,
So,
well,
just a thought.
so I don't know what that is for, I know what it is for residential, because I just looked at it today, it's 9.96. I don't know what it is for commercial, and that might be different.
It is.
Okay. I have no,
My dad has rental properties. They're not
The
even the
commercial
same
ones. Okay.
conversation.
so I would definitely like to have that conversation.
So that was already on our to-do list. Alyssa and I had that to revamp that Star Theater. And I've mentioned to Jeff that we need to be meeting. We just haven't had the bandwidth. And now that with Julia coming on, we're going to wait for her to revamp and look at those contracts.
Okay.
But for budget purposes, I left it the same. But understand also that even though the budget is that amount and we go in and make changes to the contract and increases their revenue, that doesn't change anything for budget purposes. It just means we have more revenue at the end of the year. So it's not, the discussion of what to do with contracts and payments isn't necessary, need to be done in the budget committee because it doesn't affect the budget once it's built, if that makes sense. Yep. Facilities, or pension stabilization fund. Okay, it's been a long 3 days. I think I'm confused. Okay, so this fund was established due to the fact that how much the city was unfunded actuals for our PERS. And what we did was we put $94,700 or $400 a year into this account, and we got it up to $250. We took that $250, we tried to hit the match when PERS gave out that option to get a match. We missed the match. We were waitlisted. We were like number 80 on the list. And then COVID hit and they never got to do another one to try to help some of the people on the wait list. So we didn't do it, make it. But that $250 was still submitted and still used to do our eval. And it did make a difference, and I'll show you that in the next slide here in a minute. So at this point, the recommendation is that we stop putting money into the PERS stabilization fund. The $278 that is in there currently. October they will be doing another match, or right around October. We'll do the best we can to jump into that match, and hopefully we get it. It's going to be tight. The last one was gone within seconds. But we're going to try because that amount will still make an effect. And then we will go forward and just watch to see what happens. I had a long conversation with the lady from PERS and understanding how all this works. And this second payment going in would be good, but then we really need to see the effects. So you want to go to the next slide. You can see from the first 250,000, our rate dropped from the 29.33 to the 25.87, and then it dropped from 22.25 to the 20.88. So that was a really good drop for the 250,000. So the next 278 will be helpful. That's why we're recommending that we don't need to have any more come from the police department. Another important factor to understand is that we're in a pool of cities that are all unfunded, and some things don't, even though we're putting the money in there, there's other factors of us being in the pool that it's not as a clean, oh yay, we put money and reduced it. It still goes into an equation and it still affects. So that's part of why when I talked to the lady at PERS and she kind of explained how all the pieces work and it's super complicated, that is the super simple version I'm giving you. That the best thing we should do is put it in and wait and see, look what staffing does, look and see what the next, which would be at the end of 23 when they do the next 2-year reval of what our PERS rate will be, and then move and then decide from there what we think we need to do. So that's the recommendation for the PERS stabilization fund. And then the next slide shows the budget. Any questions? Okay, so the next part, the fun part of the budget, the 5-year forecast. So this part of the budget, when I started making lots of changes to it. When the staff writes their budget now, they write their budget with the 5-year forecast in front of them. So when they're making their decisions, they're looking at the effects right away, which is also when you guys brought a suggestion forward, I gave you the effects of what that looks like, because in this type of budgeting and managing money, it's best to see what you're going to do today and see what that looks like later. So as we've been building maintenance plans, we've been adding to these funds. So these details are on pages 91 through 105. And it's all of our main funds. SDCs are not in here because they're a different type of fund, but your general fund, library, all of those funds are in here with their 5-year forecast. So we have a 5-year forecast because we always want to be planning and preparing and do the best we can to strategize to ensure the protection of the city's funds and the public's money. So in building that this year, there's lots of pieces that were involved. COVID has been a major effect on what's been happening, looking at what they think the growth out is going to be. So all of these pieces I've put in here to the best of the knowledge I could get from the neutral economists that I listen to that are really data-driven and just telling us what they think numbers are going to do and trying to compare it against historical. One of the issues that's tough is that our anomaly, even though we had a high CPA rate spike in '08 with that crash as a result, this is an anomaly because this spike is driven by a lot of supply lane issues and that kind of stuff. So they don't have a best model, but they're still kind of using that guideline to kind of give that. So I used these factors, and I'll go through that in a second as I laid out these 5-year projections. So the next slide is like we talked about before, but this is always a good one to re-see. And then for the new people, when you're looking at this, you see at the bottom, I have on each fund that you're looking at has a red, yellow, or green, as a red or green if we meet fiscal policy. It's important to know that the first 2 years, your fund should meet policy. That's important. The third year, it gets harder to predict and forecast. But if that one is red, that would kind of be a yellow issue, and you probably want to keep a close eye on that to see what's happening. If you're red right off the bat after the first year, we definitely have an issue. If the fourth and fifth year are red, again, we want to keep an eye on that. If the fifth year's red, you're really in good shape because the longer you go past 3 years, it's harder and harder to see if that's actually going to work. Any questions on that part? Okay. So,
Chair Lewis.
so go ahead.
Councilor Patty.
Councilor Patty.
Real quick, Susanna, before we get too far away from it, I'm just kind of curious, the stabilization fund, I know that you're giving the recommendation to terminate that at this point, but what if any like fiscal indicators should we be on the lookout for to determine if that needs to return? Because before, I mean, it kind of came out of the blue, as I understand it, that we just had to devote this position towards that. So, I mean, do we just wait to see what our contribution is year to year to determine that? Is that basically it?
So what, from my understanding, and Alyssa was here, she can add to it, is what was happening as they do their evaluation to determine what our PERS rate is, and they do it by 2-year blocks, right? And what was happening is that percentage you were paying was climbing at astronomical rate because it was like in the 18%-ish, and then it jumped really high. And this option came up from PERS to be able to do this to try to drive that percentage down. So when we get the new rates for the next 2 years in '23, if it stays in that range, and depending on how many tiered officers and ops officers we have, if you go back to that slide real quick, you can see that there's a difference. So our brand new officers is 20.88%, right? But our older officers that have been here longer and in PERS longer than, I forget the year, I don't remember, but they're at the 29.33. And we have, so that's going to make all of those factors when we get that new rate for the 24, 25 year for those 2-year blocks. And if it doesn't climb too much and we're staying within range, then I can have a Millibans kind of give me an estimate of what they think it would do the next couple years out. Then we can look at it from there. So we'd have, 4 years to figure out if we do need to change again. So all those factors. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
I'm thinking out loud here, but I'm just worried about where that money's going to come from in the future if we were to have to return that fund. And I would hope that after what we heard from Chief Friesendahl, it doesn't come from the police department. That's just my initial thoughts.
Yes. And we would have plenty of time to really look at what our options would be as well. With growth and other things too, it may not, we might be okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Are we paying down that unfunded liability, and by how much?
So the 250 that we put in it paid us down. Actually, it was really nice because the lady said, out of a lot of the cities, ours is kind of low. So we're actually doing better than some cities, if that helps you feel better. And this other 278,000 that I have in the budget will be going this fiscal year toward it.
Okay.
And then when they do their recalculations, we'll see where we land in the unfunded portion. PERS probably is never fully funded because of the dynamics of how that fund works, but the keeping our liability lower
Oh, yeah.
keeps that percentage reasonable for us.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So the next one. So with the ones that you have in your book right now, we see that the pool is still in the red because it doesn't go, it's red right away. It doesn't even meet policy. So, and we're already planning on a work session to come up with some strategies on longevity for the pool. Water and stormwater, which you heard from Lance, there's many reasons why that is still in the red. And also, like I said the other night, the water fund in the 5-year projection actually doesn't have all of the jobs or the projects that actually need to happen because he wants to complete the master plan first. But these are some of them, the ones that he already knew. And so the ones that you see in there right now, but there are more to go for those. Wastewater, I put in yellow just because we know that Lance also talked about some really big projects that need to be accomplished that are big dollars. Depending on how that goes, it could sway that fund into the red, depending on what we do with ARPA money and those kind of things. And then general fund, it's doing really decent. It's, as you saw, that 4th year is red, but I put it there because we just don't know which things are going to sway. And as we make changes, as we watch the economy, that could sway that fund. So that's why I left that in the yellow. And then you see that parks and library completely improved by the effects of the levy. So that's a positive. And street and of course, those two are going strong. And then you can see also as you go to each page, when you finish the budget portion, you see the nice build out of the projects that we planned. One of the nice things is Mike and I spent a lot of time on the pool, really giving you great detail of what needs to be continued maintenance, what are things that we still need to fix, the things that we plan to fix with this budget, and those things going forward. So this one, I hope will really help you when we do the work session. We worked really hard to update this and make it more if you look at last year's compared to this is really well done. While the pool was closed, you know that Mike spent a lot of time at the pool making lots of notes and really addressing lots of issues. So this was one of the great things that came out of that time he really had with the pool. So when I built these assumptions, for this year, of course, we has the 8.7% CPI rate. Next year has a 6% CPI rate, and then it goes back to 2.5 for the rest of the time. That is because they're predicting that it's going to take until sometime in 23 or 24 for the CPI rate to get back down to normalcy. So this was me kind of trying to pick in the middle somewhere because I don't expect it to be in the 8s, but I don't expect it to get down that quick. So I was just kind of like trying to judge somewhere in between that it'll go to the 6. So that is there. There's 8% added for PERS increase, just in case. I left us a good cush for looking at that. There's 5%, it's on the front, let me go see. There's a 5% increase for health insurance throughout the entire time. And then a basic 2 to 3% increase for just general needing to have different items or just a general cost as well, just because, as we continue to do more maintenance plans and do more things, things go up. And keeping transfers at a 2 to 4% range. And then the capital projects are all based by the maintenance plans you have at the bottom. And so that's how I structured the 5-year plan, and that's how I brought us to this place. Any questions on any of that? I know that was a lot of data.
Chair Lewis.
Counselor Quigley.
Not a question per se, Susanna, but thanks for doing that. If I had seen that in the past, I think that would really help the governing body look with foresight to the future and maybe really try to help with policy. So, good work.
Thank you. You're welcome. It was really cute. The first time we did it, some of the staff were like, that's kind of scary to write the budget when you're looking at the 5-year at the same time. I'm like, I know, but it's going to help you. And this year it was so easy for them. So thank you. Appreciate that. And they're all doing a great job with it too. So.
Chair Lewis, real quick, Susanna, if we could, thank you so much. I just was going to go ahead and put this forward to everybody. I think that we should also kind of look at the water and the storm funds as well when we do that work session and not just the pool because of the financial forecast on those. It seems like that's worthy of discussion amongst, at the very least, the council to make sure those meet forecasts in the next at least 3 to 4 years, right? And
Yeah.
if I'm looking at this now, the stormwater fund already doesn't meet policy by 23, 24.
Yep.
So
It doesn't make it at all. Well, this next slide, the ARPA funds is going to be a work session. And all of these utility funds, because all of that is allotted for it, that ARPA funds is going to be critical on how you guys plan that for these utility funds. So it could be work ARPA / utility funds is kind of what we planned, because I think that needs to be the priority on how we strategize what we're going to do with those funds.
I would agree with that. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair Lewis,
Counselor Ord?
Susanna, point of clarification there. So the ARPA funds that are in here or they're not in here?
They're in there and they're allotted to spend every bit of it, but it's not dedicated to anything yet. So it's just in non-operational in the general fund as spent. And so what'll happen is we'll do the work session. We'll determine where we're going to spend it. Then I'll do a budget adjustment to move that money to that fund. And then whatever the water that didn't use for the 900 we sent for the sand bed that they're in the process doing, that will get reallocated to whatever we do. If we do more water, whatever. So it'll have to be very meticulously watched. It's federal dollars. Any other questions on this part? Okay. That's it. So, ta-da. Thank all of you for all of your time and your questions. It's been wonderful walking through this together and having more questions this time. I'm really glad that this is getting to become a comfortable document for all of you. And I'll give it to Alyssa.
So at this time would be an option to talk about the Chamber of Commerce proposal. Just so you know, I emailed it out earlier today, but we had handed out also the council packet information from April 18th. That includes the information on what in-kind the city is already providing, and additionally, it has an email that was sent to staff and the council in February of 2022, and the membership brochure that they had provided us.
Chair Lewis.
Counselor Quigley?
So Alyssa, I think there's 2 requests on behalf of the chamber, right?
Correct, and I
So
actually.
the individual that came and spoke on opening night of the budget committee, the second request was to fund their visitor center for $15,000, right?
Correct,
And that's currently not in the budget.
correct.
So if the committee would like to entertain that one, I think that's where we should start.
I'm getting back to the slides from last night. Sorry, we got really far last night, and so I got to go kind of far here, just so you guys can have it on your screen. Here we go. So here it shows their proposal, the membership, $2,500 annual membership fee, and the additional $15,000 annual support for the visitor center.
So discussion. Go ahead.
Thank you. Seeing as we have such a shortfall in so many other areas, I don't see how this year, when we have things in the red, how we can bring on more funding like with the $15,000. So I personally don't see myself making a motion to entertain that request from them.
Sure. Counselor Quigley?
So in her email from February, she commented on having she mentioned having a claim to our transient occupancy tax money. How valid is that claim?
So it's not necessarily, I guess, it's the city's money.
Okay.
And the city can decide, typically in other communities, here, let me go to this other page. They do partner a lot of times with their visitor center, and it's usually it's linked to an agreement, and it has deliverables. So there is a lot of these that have the visitor center contributions, have hotels. They have a lot higher occupancy tax coming in. And so, but all of them, I actually heard directly from Sweet Home today. And I have, for instance, I've looked through their contract, and there's very specific deliverables on when the visitor center is open, how often the visitor center is open, expectations if they're going to close it. There's a lot of deliverables tied to it, and providing us with information on referrals, and it gets very specific. So there would be a lot of partnership there, I guess you could say, in what we would expect if we were to be giving funding for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chair Lewis,
Councilor Quigley.
not seeing any action on that particular topic for the visitor center only. I think it's moot point at this point.
Chair Lewis,
Councilor Hook.
I was hoping to make a motion, since it's not like we're moving forward on that topic. I would like to make a motion to temporarily move the one FTE position under the police fund that has not been filled for the last 2 years in order to, because it was used to fund the pension stabilization fund, and move that to administration to hire a full-time limited duration for 1 year grant writer to work to get grants in for all departments, including the police department, across the city, and work to build a volunteer-based or internship-based grant writing team. If successful, that position would be eligible to be considered for funding in the following year as a brand-new position, returning the one FTE back to the police department in the 2023-2024 budget cycle.
Do we have a motion on the floor? Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Chair Lewis.
Chair
Moved and
Lewis.
Seconded for discussion.
May I?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So the reason why I made this motion is I had asked before Budget Committee to see some type of data showing a need for us to reinstate this position, so that we would have that in front of us for the Budget Committee, which I didn't see that. We have the pool in the red in 2024. We have problems with our stormwater, our stormwater funds that are also going into the red in 2024, 2025. Hiring that police officer when there isn't data to show that we need it for the safety of our community at this point. And we've been doing okay without it for the last 2 years. It just seems like such a commitment to put that back in when we have so much in the red. We don't know if we're going to need to restabilize that pension fund in a couple of years either. So to hire a police officer only to have to then cut something later because the data doesn't show that we need that doesn't really make sense. Plus, we have a lot of other areas that need a lot of attention, such as the huge potholes around some of our streets that we have that we haven't been able to get to funding also. So there's just a lot. Everybody needs money. Every single department needs money. And so I think putting in something temporary that could bring in a lot of money to help the entire city just for 1 year, and then returning it right back, sounds like a pretty safe idea for us to do, because the amount of money we could bring in with that grant writer is pretty incredible. There's a lot of money out there, And the staff have made it very clear they do not have time to go after all these grants. They are all maxed out. They are working very hard.
Brent?
I'd like to hear from the police chief on what he feels about this going forward and the necessity. And the other thing I'd like to say is just because we have grant writers, no one's going to give us every grant. So there comes a time where you're going to max out no matter how many grant writers you have. You aren't going to get the money.
Okay, I'm up.
Would you care to comment on this?
Yeah, I can comment it. As I said the one night too, training and bringing a police officer on board isn't something that, like when I started one of my first jobs, within 2 days I was trained and I was operational, right? They gave me the keys to the shop and I'm off doing stuff. A police officer takes time. This extra position is also a higher level police officer. We're talking about a detective. Talk about somebody who does very high-level investigations, search warrants, preparation, those type of things to help alleviate the police officers that are now having to do that while they're on patrol. So what happens is you have a cascading effect. If officers are having to write large amounts of warrants, which now the courts are asking more of us to do, they're not on patrol. They're in the office actually physically doing these investigations because it's their case. I don't have the ability currently with our staffing to actually put that into a detective's hands to take that burden off, to get that officer back out on the field to do proactive policing and respond to the police calls that are there. What you will see over time, along with population growth and that type of thing, is then our response times will start growing too. So people will have to wait longer for service because they're busy doing other things. So anytime that you start taking back or not allowing us to have those services, it takes longer for us. So hire an officer now is really like 3 years out, 2 years out, before that person is really functioning at such a high level. So it takes time. So having that extra staff member that we have to be at that assignment alleviates a lot of that pressure and gives us the ability to be proactive. I will tell you, I've looked at the numbers in regards to our population and PD staffing since 2010. We've grown. Not tremendously, 2010. This is from Portland State University. We had about 7,645 people in our community. In 2010, there was also the subliminal contract too, so that added a couple of officers plus another 3,000 people. Since then, we're now, as of Portland State, I know our signs say 8,400 from their same database. This year, we're at 8,265. We went back from the 13 back in 2018. It was 13 and 2.5 staff members non-sworn. We have reduced even that now, 1 down to 12. So we have 12 sworn officers, and we're down to 1.5 non-sworn. So we've actually taken even more resources away from the police department. I would urge you that I understand what you're saying and the money. There's also other ways to do the grant writing and that funding. What I'm operationally for us and to be able to be on the street and keep things and being proactive, it's going to assist us. The warrant that we just did the other day on a pretty major case, can't talk about because obviously the case under investigation. We were spending a lot of time and a lot of extra hours for those officers that were having to spend time off to write those warrants and take care of that work and exhausting them. And at the same time, they're having to stop what they were doing in the warrant preparation and actually go take calls too. So again, it's a forecast thing. It's not instantaneous. I don't swear an officer in and they're ready to go. It takes time and it takes development. Our community is growing. Things will change. The other part is that you don't want to get behind as you have a problem. If we start having some more criminal issues or different elements within the community, there's a lot of things we need to be able to combat that and be agile to do that. That's staffing, and resources. And you've heard me talk about professional capacity and training those folks up. It's imperative. And if it starts happening, for us to actually be responsive to that, to come to you and say, I need 2 more officers because all of a sudden we're having a lot more issues and I don't have the resources, it's going to take several years. This community will then potentially be behind 8 ball. I want to keep us ahead. I want to keep us at that point where we can still be responsive to what's going on. We're still full service police department, folks. And this is nothing against the sheriff's office at all. When they decide to go to online reporting, that should be an indicator for you. That's mean they don't have the officers to go out and actually meet each and every person when they actually have their car broken into, or a trespass issue, or the kid's bicycle got stolen. They're saying, hey, we don't have the resources, I can't help you with that. Make a phone call, we'll take a report for your insurance or anything. We don't do that here at Stayton right now. We're able to actually fully service the calls that we have. Sometimes they're delayed. We've had people have complaints, even now, the staff we have, we get busy enough where sometimes people, low priority calls will sit for a couple hours. I don't think that's the level of service that you as the council or me as the police chief really wants to do. I would like to be able to make sure that we're as responsive as we can. Things do happen and we do get overloaded. It's just the nature of the work and what's happening. But I would like to stay ahead of that. That's part of the reason this, bringing that 13th back. And it doesn't really, it's not adding anything. It's actually just getting us back up to where we are at, all the way back, you know, it says 2011. That's when we were at 13. And I still don't have the halftime in my non-sworn. So I have one person, hopefully we'll have the other half person announce that for our non-sworn. That's a burden on them too. The more work that we do, they have to process, they have to take care of evidence, they have to do these other things. So we're having other officers take on some of those responsibilities so we can actually balance out our workload. And I don't know how nuanced you want to get, but that's sort of a good general overview of what we're doing. We're never going to go away from 24 hours of coverage. I know that's been a concern. That's not a concern for us. We will continue that 24/7 coverage. But again, the ability for us to stand on our own 2 feet, law enforcement's changing throughout the region. You know, the sheriff's office has 70 some odd sworn. FTEs are down to 55. And they're trying to bring more on. Those days of being able to just to refer to other resources around us aren't there. They're harder. They're getting harder. So for us to have that ability to sort of stand on our own 2 feet and not ask for that help all the time is a good thing for our community. So.
Thank you, sir. Councilor
Chair
Hutton.
Lewis.
I'm looking at the data that we do have here, and I'm seeing that compared to 2019, this is on page 34, police activity in 2019 was 8,601. In 2020, it went down to 7,271 and 7,796. So it's been lower there. Offenses, same thing. They went up a little bit here in 2021, but then everything else in this data is showing much lower than 2019. So I guess I'm not seeing the data that supports a need to increase when things are decreasing. And I did ask for more like data to be put in front of us of telling us why you do need it. And from what I see that you don't need it right now. Not to say that you don't need it in 1 year, but that you don't need it right now.
So I'll disagree with you on the numbers. You're looking at very specific. Yes, activity is everything that we do, but we also see in that as offenses. It's up 2,257. Those are reports written. Okay, that is labor work. If you want to, you know, I always tell my officers we don't make widgets where we're at. You know, we're people. But I can tell you right there, you're seeing the offenses. What you're seeing is that maybe the activity level's down, but the type of activity we have is actually increasing. That's why we're writing more reports. If it was simply just field contact, you wouldn't see that. So you actually see an increase of the offenses to 2,257. The other part I would say is, I think I'd be proud if you get to see NIBRS down. NIBRS is the National Incident-Based Reporting System. That's crimes. So it's not every single crime. So we go to an event, you could have 3 crimes, but you get basically the top in the report. So seeing that you're actually seeing a reduction, a very minor reduction in that means our crime rate's actually heading in probably a decent direction. I can tell you this year, we're already starting to have some upticks in areas. This is obviously from last year. That's a good thing. It's only like 0.8. You know, it's not a lot. It's not I'm going to sit there and cheer about, but it's good. We're keeping steady and we're doing more work. Those offenses, that's reports, that's officer signatures and typing and doing the documentation. And what you'll also see is that the citations, yes, they're down from 219, but it's the same thing. We're doing greater amount of work. So a lot of times, like citations, those are proactive type work. That's being free to be able to look at traffic offenses and do that. And as I said in my announcement during my presentation too, we've arrested 36 DUIs this year since January 1. We only did 40-something last year. There's things that start happening. You start looking at those type of trends. It starting to speak to things a little bit. The other part is it's more work. Those officers, it's not the simple days when I first started as a police officer where I would arrest somebody for a DUI, they would go and do the breathalyzer, read it, and we were done within a few hours. Now, as I said before, simply somebody asking for, the way the laws have changed, for a breath test now, and they want an attorney, we write a search warrant for that. That's not a simple task. That's not 2 seconds or 2 minutes, it's done. It's hours worth of extra work. So I would say a lot of this is your police department trying to keep things steady, and I think doing a good job by that data. And I'd also look at arrests, if you look at that. If you look at the numbers, it's 326 for, the offenses. We're arresting a lot of people. That means we're holding people accountable and we're doing quality investigations. I can't control who goes to the county jail. I can't control who gets prosecuted. That's not how our system's built. Those go to other people within our county to do that, but we're doing the work. I think you can see that there. So.
Counselor Patty?
Thank you so much. Yeah, while this motion is well-intentioned with the grant writer, I tend to agree with you on the grant writer thing. I think removing this position from the police department, that's premature. I think we're about to hire this new city manager. I would like to see her in that position for a few months before committing to a deviation in staff's recommendation to return the FDE to the police department. And those are my individual thoughts. I think that Brent's right. A grant writer isn't going to be able to be a police officer in a couple of years. And we're going to need a police officer in a couple of years based on what Chief Friesendahl shared with us. Thank you.
Brent?
One of the things that worries me is that some of these larger cities go back to deciding they're going to police their city, and where's the most likely place they're going to find officers? Right here, where we're training them, and they're going to start cherry picking our guys off. And if we were already light in officers, what's that going to do to our police department?
Can I add on that for a second? I want to let you know, I'm doing everything I can for that not to occur. That's part of your guys' willingness last year for the remodel, for our wellness program, Atlas, all those things. So I am trying desperately not to have that happen to our community, and value our officers. I hate telling you, folks, I was on a meeting today with one of our commissioners, and it's about law enforcement within our county and stuff. And I was in our chief's meeting this morning, and I'm hearing it from command. Folks have been around as long as I have and longer. And we're watching the light of hope go out of these young officers because they're struggling to see what they're doing doesn't make a difference. They feel like they're being always, attacked at all times. And it's not true. This community is phenomenally about, support. But to go what you're saying, I'm doing everything I can to make sure that they feel valued here, the training that they get, the ability to move, the ability not just to push a black and white, that in the future there is a detective position, that they can actually maybe be on the crash team, go out and help with Marion County and other crimes and develop and be able to do their really good at their craft here and not just learn the basic 101s of police work and go, exactly what you're saying is, well, I've learned the 101s, there's nothing left here at Stayton, off I go. So I'm trying to create that culture here. Part of that goes to proper staffing, given our size. And again, it's not a request, it's a request to go back, not a request technically over. It's just going back to what we had for many, many years. So.
Thank you.
Chair Lewis.
Counselor Hook?
Thank you. So this is what I was really hoping for, was to see more data. It's great to hear it from you of what the struggles are, but I specifically had said, hey, I'd love to see what the data shows that there's a need for this officer position to come back and be filled. It's still earmarked there. But I was hoping to see some real data that shows that things are, picking up, but they're really, when you look at the citations and warnings, those take time too, just like a report takes time. So you see that those have almost been cut in half. And yeah, we've had a little bit of an increase in the reports that have to be written because of the offenses, but having been trained in crime analysis, I understand how, because I've done an entire analysis of the Salem Police Department and their staffing. And so it would have been nice to see some data that that supported us doing that. The thing is that there's a lot of expenses that there are grants out there for that we could be, instead of paying so much for uniforms, there may be grants out there that we could be getting for these uniforms, so then we can free up money in the police department and then be going after these and teaching people how to write grants within our own, within our own city, so that we don't have to continue to just have, like, hire more grant writers. I know people say that you can't get grants, but if you don't have time to apply for grants, you really can't. And I would really like to see us invest in a grant writer this year, because we have so many things in the red in a couple of years. Like, we have a couple more years till things start going in the red. Are we going to be able to get a levy passed again? Are we going to be able to increase the actual salaries of our police officers? Because if we want to keep police officers, we need to be able to pay the police officers, which means we need to get in money in other ways so that we can put more money towards paying our police officers well, because they're not being paid. Like the police chief said himself, we can't compete with some of these other agencies, so we have to make the environment better. Why can't we compete with these other agencies? If we have someone that can go out and fight to get us money, which it is an art. It is an art. You need someone that really knows how to do it. But if we can't do that, if we can't have someone go fight for that money for us, how are we going to bring in more money when everyone else is strapped? If we are having people across the city, including in the police department, going out and trying to find grants and write grants, that takes time off of them instead of being out there in the community. Why can't we relieve them of that and have them look specifically for grants for the police department too? I just think that the data isn't there to fill it right now. That's not taking it away from them at all. It's just saying, not this year. And then that gives us, as a budget committee, it gives us the chance to see how that grant writer performs and if we should invest in it as a permanent position in other years, giving that position right on back to the police department, not to be touched for the grant writer a second year or anything like that. It's just limited duration. If it does well, cool. If it doesn't, you get rid of it. And you say, it didn't work out. We're not going to fund it again. That's just what I have to say, and that's the last thing I have to say on that.
Chair Lewis,
I'd like to call for the question.
same here.
So we've been asked to call for the question?
Yes.
So
Would you like me just to poll everyone?
And remind me, what is it we're voting on? What she's talking about?
Yes, it was her motion.
Wait,
Uh,
do we vote on whether to call the question?
No.
We're going to vote.
Can we repeat the
Whether
question?
or not we take the money from the police and give it to a grant writer.
All right. Counselor Hook?
Yes.
Hold on, I've got it right. Ralph?
Yes.
Luke?
Not sure yet.
I can come back to you. Counselor Ort?
I've had a question that I feel like would be pertinent to this vote. So I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Brent?
No.
Counselor Quigley?
No.
Counselor Patty?
No.
Mayor Porter? Tim?
No.
All right, motion fails. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I'm sorry. Luke?
Abstain also.
Oh, okay. So let me just count this. Motion fails, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 2 with 2 abstentions.
Chair Lewis?
Counselor Ort?
This question is for the police chief and possibly Susanna as well. So, and this is the question I was going to ask. If the information that we got showed that the pension stabilization fund still needed the money in it, for this fiscal year, would the recommendation to do what we're doing right now stay the same, or would the recommendation be to not fill the position and put the money into the pension fund this year?
The recommendation is to put the position back in the police department, regardless what the PERS stabilization is doing. We don't need to put any more in the PERS stabilization fund at this point.
That's not what I asked, though. I said if you were told you should be putting more money in there.
Okay, if we needed to put money in the PERS stabilization, I would still say we need to fill the officer position.
Okay, thank you.
You want to add to that, David?
Chairman Lewis, may we move on to the packet we've got regarding the Chamber of Commerce?
Okay, let's move. I think from what you've told us, it seems pretty squishy, the relationship that we have with the chamber. It doesn't seem like we know what they're going to do for us. I mean, what she wrote here sounds really nice, but we don't know if that's going to happen over and over and over, and we're going to get our $2,500 worth.
Right.
The brochure says that we could do 1,000, and the 15,000, I'm not sure where that even comes in. I'm not sure what.
Yeah, so it's two separate things. So with the annual membership fee, for several years, we've been paying an $800 membership fee. More of a supporter is how we were viewing it, which is one of the categories, right? And so this year, that's what we sent again. What she expressed, and I think her representative may have even stated, is that the only level the city fits at is the $2,500 level, because we have what she categorizes as affiliate locations, because we're not all in one building. So it's my understanding, like, the city of Sublimity is in the $1,000 membership category. But because we are in multiple locations, we fall in this higher category. And so she said, I'm pretty sure, that is the only category that the city of Stayton could fit into.
So when you say we, you mean those folks on the back table there?
Correct. So we've got Public Works and Planning across the street. The police department's in its own building. We just don't all fit in one building, and the library is over here. So
I'm still not clear how that has anything to do with anything. I mean, we are the city. They are the management team. They could be, well, look, for a year, they've been at home. So, off and on.
Chair Lewis.
Mr. Quigley?
The way Alyssa's right, they only gave us one option, and they were adamant about it. The only option that the city has is $2,500. And she based that on departments, that each one of the departments is a referral, I guess, on their website. There was a lot of discussion at our previous meeting last month. We asked a lot of questions. We asked a lot of support to really support the request for $2,500. And we tried to explain that there's a cost of the city providing benefits in the form of the police, and as Lance mentioned yesterday, closing the street down for their event. And for some reason, that just didn't filter out. They think they're entitled to that as a city service, and they don't see the like-kind exchange there. And so, in my mind, we really tried hard to ask for the deliverables. We asked for backup. We've never been provided a profit and loss statement to support the expenses that they claim in their letter. So that's what I really struggle with. We're not a business. It's city government. There's a difference there. And if you want to really start splitting hairs, then look at all the other members that are on the chamber that don't pay the $2,500 that have departments. Certainly, Sublimity has a public works department. They have something else, I'm sure. Yeah, the school district has all sorts of departments. So
I do think the school district is at the
Yeah, I'm just-
2,500, but just to
just throwing
point
it
that out,
there.
yeah.
And from a representation standpoint, we asked the question, well, is it the State and Sublimity Chamber of Commerce, or do you support other locations? We were told that night that there wasn't any other cities that were on there. The next morning, I went on the Chamber's website after a couple of delays trying to get through it. And under city partners, there was the city of Bombsville. And you click on the link, it goes right to the city of Bombsville's website. It's since been removed, but that was, there was an example of it right there. So I think, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the rest of the council, but I think the $2,500 that we agreed to was a placeholder until we could have this discussion and determine what you all wanted to do and go that route.
Chair Lewis, this is Councilor Patty.
Counselor Patty?
I can verify what Councilor Quigley said. I mean, I think I made the motion. It was just a placeholder for this discussion because I thought this should come before Budget Committee as to whether or not we should do something like this. My hope was that we would have some substantiating documentation from the chamber and the chamber board to go ahead and review and to substantiate some of the statements that were made at that council meeting. Hearing nothing. If I'm wrong, I'm not sure.
No, I've not received anything.
I'm uncomfortable with this, and the city's not a cash cow. I mean, that's not what the taxpayers are, and we're supposed to be stewards of the dollars that are handed to the city. And I don't feel good about motioning to make $2,500 available to this chamber until we have very specific deliverables in some sort of traditional contract. I mean, that's where I'm sitting at as an individual committee member at this point.
Chair Lewis?
Counselor Court?
So, forgive me because half of us have already had this conversation before. So, so any business that comes into the chamber, this is what they're going to get in terms of like what you're going to get for your money. So if we're at the $2,500 impact level, that's what you're going to get. Those are your deliverables, and that's what you base what your money's worth. I don't think that the chamber did their part in substantiating why we need to give the $15,000 for the visitor center. I think that is a larger chunk of money, and that would need more information. And I would agree, contract deliverables, all that. What Alyssa was saying. You know, how often is the visitor center going to be open? You know, how many contacts are you going to be making? Like those type of things. If we're going to be partners in that, that certainly is something that I would like to see. I see a significant value in the Chamber of Commerce. I would agree, like we do a lot of things for them for their events, but they put on the only largest citywide event, area-wide event every year, Summerfest. They have their chamber awards that is community-driven and, you know, reaches out across not just businesses and not just specifically businesses that are part of the chamber, but they encompass the entire canyon. They were instrumental in getting grants, partnering with Rotary for businesses, and I don't remember what the amount was, but it was a significant amount. For the staff that the chamber has, you know, they're working with 1.5 full-time people. For the staff that they have at the chamber, they do a tremendous amount of work. And I don't think that $2,500 is too much to ask for us to contribute to that. I definitely see the value, and I would like to see that stay. If we want to talk about, or if that conversation wants to come forward to give more money, then I think, you know, we can push farther, but that's where I'm at. I would vote for the $2,500 to stay.
Chair Lewis, this is Councilor Patty.
Counselor Patty?
I just want to point out for the Summerfest, we spend $9,442 for the police department staff's time for the permitting, their operational plan, and the day of the event working that. I would agree there is value in the chamber, but I already see a contribution here, and I tried to present that to Chamber Director. And as Counselor Quigley kind of more eloquently articulated, that didn't seem impressed upon them, and I just don't see how $2,500 is merited at this point. I mean, especially when the city next to us is spending $1,000. And then, Alyssa, did we ever find out if Almsville pays into that at all?
I believe that she had indicated they are not members.
That's what I remembered too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chair Lewis.
Counselor Hook?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I don't want to like break down a relationship more than what it already sounds like is kind of happening with this. I would love to see us kind of maybe come to at least on our side where we can, a type of a place where we could negotiate, continue to negotiate, still have some dollars marked of where we are comfortable contributing, so we don't just completely wipe it from the budget. But, we don't need job postings. We have, like, that's a $480 value apparently right there. Like, there's a lot of things in here that we don't use, plus when you think about what Counselor Patty just said, spending $9,000 on police time in the police budget for Summerfest. That should have some value. So I think if we meet somewhere in the middle, maybe look at like inflation rates and things like that of, okay, we've been paying $800. All right, well, if this CPI is 8 point whatever, then maybe if we increase it just by the CPI and just offered that as a negotiation point. If they don't take it, if they don't want to offer us some type of a contract and show us like how the referrals are actually panning out, because I would be very interested in like, what are these 1,700 contacts? What are those? Are they just clicks on the website? Are those phone calls? How many minutes on average are their phone calls that they are fielding for us? I would just like to see more details. It stands exactly behind what I had said in my last motion. Like, I just want to see more details because our job here is to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, right? So I don't want to break down a relationship because I think there's a whole bunch of value in having a good relationship with the chamber. But at the same time, we are giving a lot already to them in police staff time for Summerfest and supporting that. So I was hoping that maybe as we go along, I don't have a motion yet really or anything, but this is just my 2 cents as we go forward, hoping that maybe we can come to some type of a compromise where we leave it on there as a line item, maybe think of something a little bit more fair, but also that needs to come with some accountability and transparency at the same time, and leaving that up to the city staff to decide what is a standard for transparency and giving people money.
Chair Lewis. Go ahead,
Counselor
Brad.
Ord?
Alyssa, correct me if I'm wrong, but they didn't give us any options. We're either going to give them $2,500 tonight or nothing.
Correct. And we've already, in this current fiscal year, given them the $800 when they sent us the invoice. We sent the $800 that we normally would send. And so essentially they said, well, you've paid that, but we're still going to be billing you for the remainder.
Okay, I would like to move, we deny the request of the chamber.
You're a second? No, you just want to talk. I guess we don't, do we need a second?
Yes.
Go ahead, Counselor Ord.
I'd like to make a motion that we give the chamber $2,500.
I think it died.
Well, we already have a motion to not give them.
Oh,
Doesn't have a
well,
second.
right, it doesn't have a
Yeah,
second.
it didn't have,
Does it die?
Chair Lewis,
Counselor Quigley.
I'd like to continue the discussion if we could for a little bit. And I'll start. Counselor Hook's point. We afforded the chamber, it's been a month now, to come back with the questions we had for us, to submit to us something that shows the support level. We have nothing from them. The gentleman that came on opening night basically reiterated the same talking points that the chamber gave us at our meeting last month. My question the chamber. I had a whole bunch of questions that I'd like to ask them. One of them would be, what is the percentage, what mix of businesses in the community belong to the chamber? You got to realize that we are giving away taxpayer money, no matter how minute it is or how small it is. The chamber had an opportunity to go out and to solicit membership from all the businesses in town. And there's a lot of businesses that declined to join the join the chamber for whatever reason. And now we are going to turn around and take the taxpayer money that they opposed, they didn't want to join the chamber, and now we're going to basically give it to them because the chamber tells us $2,500 or nothing. So I'm just not there yet. It's got to be a two-way street. It's got to be a communication. It's not there.
Chair Lewis. So I want to have a different look on this. We're not going to give the $2,500 to them. More or less, we're investing into our community. So that $2,500 that we are giving to them, that chamber is going to give that back to us probably tenfold in economic value that they push to us, to our community. Excuse me. And I worry that as a community as a whole, that if we lose that economic value, we start to go to a downhill slope. It never hurts. It's like putting $2,500 investing into marketing or social media or however it works. This is a basic thing that I think a lot of cities need to value, and $2,500 is not that big of an investment.
If it doesn't work, it's a big investment. As a business owner, I determined that I got nothing for my membership other than to meet in the mornings on a Wednesday, and that was about it. Without having any, if we look at that list, every single one of those cities has a member on the board, either a liaison, an elected official, or somebody on the board directly. And the closest one is half the yearly dues. Well, Cottage Grove is all over the place, but all the rest of them are half. It seems like an awful lot of money to spend for marketing when we don't have any kind of answer as to whether or not it works. And if they're not, and apart from having someone on the board and getting that information, I would vote for the $1,000 mark and say, this is what we're offering, and yes or no, be okay with walking away.
Councilor Huck?
So I'm struggling here because I want to see us build bridges, not burn bridges. And I'm with Tim Singh on the fact that, like, there is value in it just having the partnership in general, because they do help a lot of the other businesses, and we are trying to help Stayton grow and thrive and all that. Where the problem for me lies is handing over the money without any transparency on how that's being spent. How do we go about getting services from them? I see there's a social media thing. What does that look like for us to use that? Because if we're paying this in and they can help us with some of the social media posts, there's a lot of value in that, because then our staff isn't having to do that. We can just say, we need to post on this. I could totally see there being value in that. The problem is there is no offer of having a liaison for their board. There is no transparency in what they mean by 1,700 contacts or whatever that is that they called it. I'd like to see us, like I said before, come up with something that's maybe a negotiation of how much we would earmark for it in the budget, not promising that we're going to give it unless we get the transparency that we're asking for, and being clear, letting city staff go off of best practices of what does that look like in a government agency, because that's what we are. We're not just another business. We're a government agency. We have to have transparency in how we're spending our money. but still not taking it completely off, because I think that's going to burn a bridge that we really don't want to burn, because the chamber does do a lot for the community in general. Even if there are some business owners that don't feel like they do a lot for them, I worry that we're going to burn a bridge, and we already have a lot of bridges to mend with community partners, and I hate to see us tear one down that has been okay in the past until just kind of recently where this is coming up.
Chair Lewis.
Counselor Ord.
We're talking about a difference between $1,700. We're paying $800. They're asking, in this instance, for $2,500. We're talking about $1,700. And Tim was right. This is an investment in our community. We no longer have the Stayton events. The Chamber of Commerce is the only an entity that keeps a calendar of local events. They also take all of our city events, Jana's library events, and post them onto their website, onto their social media. They do a lot in their email blasts. I get their email blasts weekly. They post, I cannot verify, I see Jana talking over there. I cannot verify that they do all of them, but I know that they do this. When Carmel came to us, she was talking about the different things that the chamber does for the city and for the community as a whole, not just for chamber members. I lost my train of thought there. Counselor Hook hit the nail on the head. We're not known as a business-friendly city. Like, that is our reputation. The Chamber of Commerce they do a fantastic job of lifting us up and highlighting and helping us out in those categories. We have nowhere in the budget for an advertising fund. We don't do we have social media, but we don't have a budget for advertising. We don't advertise any of the services, any of our revenue generating services. We don't advertise any of that. And this is a way to do that. And for $2,500, for $1,700 more, that's pretty cheap when we're talking about a $30 million budget for something, like Tim said, will get us back. And it's not just the economic development. These are relationships. When you go to chamber events, you're connecting with your community members, you're building those relationships. So when hard times come, when the fires come, when the ice storm comes, you have the chamber and the Rotary coming together and raising money. They I can't even tell you, they raised an extraordinary amount of money in such a small amount of time for our business, for all businesses. They handed out PPE for all businesses. This is not a relationship that we want to sever over $1,700, and that's the last thing I'm going to say about it.
I'd like to call for the question.
Yeah, no motion. No, they both died for lack of a second.
I'd like to make a motion, Chair Lewis, that we give the chamber $2,500.
Second?
And that's for the membership.
That is for the membership, yes.
Second that motion.
So it's been moved and seconded?
I'll have discussion.
Chair Lewis, I'd like discussion too.
Go ahead.
So I might be able to support that if we in turn can turn around and bill the chamber for the police services and public works services for the Summerfest event.
Counselor?
I'm just going to go ahead and say, I'm looking at this. We got the chamber fees for all these other cities here. I mean, $2,500 is a lot of money. I don't want to sever this relationship either. Seriously, I do not want to. But if you come in here and you say it's your way or the highway, and we don't have a third option here at all, like, really, that's our only choices. And so for me, hearing $2,500, I'm a no on that. But there's other options here. I see value in the chamber too, but we have to weigh in our responsibility as stewards of the taxpayer dollar. So.
Counselor Hook?
So I know I can't vote yes on this because of the transparency issue. That's really what it boils down to for me, is the transparency issue. It's not that I don't want to give this money to the chamber. I think that coming back at them with, we're just not going to give you anything at all or earmark anything for negotiations later in the year if, if there can be some type of a conversation. Yes, I understand. They haven't provided us with the stuff that we've asked for. I get that. It's frustrating. I can tell that people are frustrated by that. That doesn't mean that we should completely close off the ability for them to come back later on, once things have maybe had time to settle a little bit, to then have a discussion with the new city manager and go, okay, what does that look like? What kind of transparency are you looking for? Where are your guys' pitfalls in getting us that information that we're looking for? Is it that you just didn't have good documentation of that? Okay, how can we work around that? What documentation do you have? What can we show the community? And then just having that conversation, leaving it open. Doesn't mean, I think the motion should include something about transparency and just leaving it earmarked in there for them if they can give us the documents that we need in order to really comply with what the standard is for giving money to nonprofits. I don't know, honestly, I don't even know how we were just handing them over $800 every year anyway, honestly. That's very weird to me to think about that, but I guess I never thought about it till we had this discussion. And so now that it's been brought to light, it's like, no matter what, we should be asking for some type of transparency with that money, because if we do this for one, then the next person that comes in, the next nonprofit that comes in and says, hand us $2,500 for a membership to support us too. And we've got a lot of them around that have been asking for money. We have a lot of great nonprofits that do good things for the community. I'm thinking of places like the Brown House, the RDS, the Historical Society. Like, there's a lot of them around. And if we do this for one, then do we have to do it for all? And we've asked for transparency in some of these other relationships that we have, so I don't see why that's any different. So while I don't want to sever any relationships, I don't see how I can vote yes on this exact motion. I do want to vote yes on some type of motion that doesn't sever the relationship with the chamber.
Sure, Louis.
Brett?
Oh, go ahead.
I agree with Councilor Patty. They didn't give us an option. It was 2,500 or hit the highway. And to me, that's what we're voting on.
Go ahead.
Chairman Lewis,
Councilor Quigley.
to say that the city's not made an attempt within the last 6 months to start the conversation, I'm simply not going to accept that. We've done what we can do to start the conversation. And to Councilor Hook's point about how we got into the beginning, we asked that question at the chamber when the chamber came to present to council, and they couldn't give us an answer. So it's very pertinent that we find out, was there a contract that we're beholden to? How did we get to this point? And how did it keep going up to the point where it's demanded now that we pay $2,500 or nothing? So I too don't want to lose the relationship, but again, there's too many variables here that affect the outcome from a long-term perspective about people coming to us with their hand out, asking for it, and we have no backup to support what they're asking for. The council over the years put the community grant awards in place, and there's parameters for the community grant awards. This is no different in my mind. What I would like to do is, we have a new city manager coming on board. Let's foster that relationship, have a discussion, but for me to just automatically say, I'm going to give you $2,500 because that's our only option, I can't do it tonight. I can't.
Could we call for the question now, please?
Yes. Can we repeat the question real quick?
Okay. All right, so let me get my paper ready here. Ralph?
No.
Mr. Cranston was asking for.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. The motion was, hold on, I've got different pages here going, to pay the $2,500 membership to the chamber. That was the motion. Okay. Counselor Hook?
No.
Luke?
No.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Brent?
No.
Counselor Quigley?
No.
Counselor Patty?
No.
Mayor Porter?
No.
Tim?
Yes.
Okay, motion fails. Sorry, I have to count. There's a lot of you guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 2. Fails. 2 in favor, 7 opposed.
Counselor Quigley?
Chairman Lewis. So Alyssa, does that mean that our current arrangement of, based on the letter the chamber sent us of $7.99 or whatever it is, still stands, correct?
Yes, so that previously, I believe, prior to me coming into this position, was the annual fee, and then it began to go up, and each year, but we continued to pay kind of, well, like I said earlier, as a supporter of the chamber, and so,
Okay. Second part of that is, so the new city manager comes on board and is able to stabilize the relationship, come to a term to accept the membership level. Does she have to come to council at that point to put that back in the budget somewhere?
so the $2,500 is in the budget already.
Right.
So at this point, I think really the reason it had landed in the council's lap is because she had went to you instead of to staff. And so I guess it would take, maybe you can put it back on staff's task list, if you want to call it that, by making a motion to tell staff, like, here's what we want you to do.
Excuse me. Oh, dear.
We're out of it, or it can come back to the council.
So is that something for tonight or something in council deliberations? I believe, I think we've saddled, and I want to use the word saddle. We've struggled as a committee on this topic, and I really think this needs to, I don't know what I think at this point.
Initially, the plan was, because they had come to the council and she had made the proposal, she was going to send us the data, the chamber was going to provide us with the data that you guys had requested, and then we were putting together our own data, which is what we brought before you. And then we were going to be coming back at a meeting probably in June to further discuss, because the motion at the council was, make sure we put money in the budget, and then the council was going to make the decision. No, it was supposed to go to the council, but then they came to the budget committee instead.
I think there's too many loose ends for us to do anything with it right now.
Sounds like it's with the council, honestly.
Yeah,
And the new city manager, I mean, it seems like that's where this should be.
yeah, and honestly, if we just move forward with how it sits right now, it'll just, we'll bring it back like we had planned to a council meeting.
So we don't have to have action on this at all then?
No, no.
Okay.
We'll kind of default back to what that motion at the council meeting was, the direction from council.
So for
Go ahead.
for clarification, that means that if we vote this section of the budget in as it is, we won't write the check, it'll still be earmarked, but they will need to provide the information for transparency. And I would kind of, well, not saying do it my way or not, but getting a board member or some kind of a transparency personnel there would be preferable.
The question was asked.
Okay. I know, and I think they said no, because that would have impugned their transparency or something along those lines.
Chair Lewis, this is Counselor Patty.
Counselor Patty.
I have direct knowledge to that statement, Luke. What was shared with us is that's against their best practices within Chamber of Commerce operations. I believe that's what the specific verbiage was. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you remember that correctly.
Point of clarification there, I believe that it was to have a board member. They kind of balked at having a board member.
Like a voting board.
A voting board member. So I don't know if that, I mean, we can obviously still have a conversation with them about what our expectations are there. But I feel like the budget committee doesn't have all the information that the council has. And so it's maybe an unfair advantage to the chamber because there's been history that the budget committee doesn't know about. And so at this point, I feel like we probably need to stop having this conversation because it doesn't seem like a fair fight, as it were, against the chamber in terms of their stance on these things.
Okay. So back to the budget itself. Do we have a motion on any of that?
Chair Lewis?
Consider approval of the proposed 22-23 fiscal year budget.
Chair Lewis?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to take the $25,000 for the City Hall lobby remodel out of that capital fund and put it into the stormwater fund.
Can't do that.
You said that, I asked you that, and you said that we could take money from the general fund and put
If you're going to
into
give it to the
funds.
general fund to storm as a transfer, that's what you're saying?
Yeah.
I'd have to
You can't do it the other way, but you.
I think I have to confirm with the budget law if I can do that as a transfer and not as a loan, because it's an enterprise fund, where the pool and the library are not enterprise funds. So I'd have to confirm that.
For money into that fund, there's transfers into the stormwater fund.
The transfers that are going into the stormwater fund are from SDCs to support projects. The transfers coming out of the stormwater fund are for administration support. So I'd have to confirm that with budget law before I can make that.
So at no time can we take general fund dollars and put them into the water,
I don't think so. I don't think
the wastewater. So the only money. So what's the money that is in the wastewater fund? What money is that? That's only SDC? I'm not talking about the SDC fund, I'm talking about the wastewater fund in general. Or, excuse me, I'm talking about the stormwater fund.
She's
Question answer.
she's asking your question.
Okay, so I'm going to restate what I said. I want to remove the project to remodel the City Hall lobby for $25,000, and I'd like to put it, if possible, into the stormwater fund.
Counselor Hook seconds.
And Chair, if I may, give an explanation. So we are spending quite a significant amount of money on our facilities plan and looking forward to the future in building a new city hall that encompasses all of our needs and looking at our funds. I just don't think that it's prudent right now. I understand at this point, I feel like it's maybe a little bit more of a want in that respect, and I'd like to see that money used differently if possible. If we can't put it into that fund, then however we can use it, I'd like to use it differently.
Chair Lewis.
Councilor Hook.
I agree, along with the plan to put, like, something that I don't love, because we're supposed to be like a friendly community, and when I go into a place that has like glass plates on their counters, it doesn't feel very friendly. In the police department, totally understand having it, 100% support having that. But going into any of the other cities around, I might see like a little shield for COVID, but a whole like barrier just screams we're not friendly. You're dangerous and we need to be protected. And I just don't think that our community members are necessarily dangerous and need to be that separated. And when I heard that that was something that was going to go up in there, it really like raised my eyebrows, like, wait a second. We already have community members feeling like they aren't like heard, or that like, to me, I don't love the idea of the remodel, especially when we're going to be looking at a whole new facility and we're spending all sorts of money on that. I agree with Councilor Ort. $25,000 could go to pay for, I mean, we just saw the data here. It could go to help pay for a half-time ordinance officer. It could really help fund that for like a year. So I just would like to see it used differently as well.
Go ahead, Luke. Sorry. Is the remodel structural in any way, or is it just cosmetic?
No, what we need to do is we need to redesign the counter to make the space in the front where staff are currently sitting more conducive for staff to work, and change in the desk arrangement and close that one section off so people can't walk behind there as easily, is also part of it, besides putting up we wanted to put up the glass in the front as well, just because of things that have been happening at City Hall that I don't think we should go into in an open forum. But, so it's not just that. I mean, so council can, or budget committee can decide that we can go ahead and restructure the counter and put the door so they can't walk behind the counter freely without putting that up, the glass up is an option as well.
So were these improvements something that was already discussed at council? No.
No, this was just put together with budget proposal, and it's here for the first time.
Mr. Mayor?
Almsville has barriers near City Hall. Last time I was in there, a few weeks ago, a real physical separation there. You don't just
Those must be new.
get in and wander around City Hall. That's just one local place that I'm familiar with. Thank you.
Sure, Lewis.
Councilor Quigley?
I think I have a solution.
Well, good.
Mr. Mayor, why don't you
Yes.
bring out your dog and we could have 24/7 canine coverage? City Hall.
I'm sorry.
Would you bring your dog to canine coverage for City Hall?
Sure. I
Trying to
turn
have
him loose everywhere.
Trying to have a little humor on a long night.
He's a person, sort of. I turn him loose everywhere.
So,
Chairman Lewis, what are we waiting on here?
I think we're
I-
waiting to see if that could be done, if the money could be moved.
Because you changed your motion to say if possible, until she's able to get it. The Oregon Budget Manual is a very large document. And so she was checking with a consultant that we work with to see, but we haven't heard back from her. So, I mean, I think we can move.
But we've never moved, I guess I'm really confused, because I asked the question like, when we got our books, I asked the
So
question.
you didn't ask me about the transferring out of the general fund. You
Yeah.
did?
I asked if,
But I didn't realize you were talking about going to an enterprise fund. I thought you were talking about pool and library and stuff. So that's my misunderstanding. I apologize. But it's fine. The motion works if doable. So all I have to do is take time to read through the Oregon manual, and if it works, it's fine. I mean, it is unrestricted dollars. It's just going to an enterprise fund, so I just need to make sure. So your motion works, and if it does, it'll go to, the budget will be changed and brought to council that way, and the LB1 will be put out and all of that with that change.
Well, so then I have a clarifying, because if we can never put money in there, how do we ever spend money? I don't, I'm just, my mind is
It
kind of blown at
collects,
the moment.
the
Where did money
revenue
come from?
comes from the utility fees.
So you're saying the only money that we could ever use for the stormwater is from the utility fee? That is outrageous. Like, this is tax money that we get from people that we're already getting, and you're telling me that we can't put it into a tax fund? Just kidding.
I'm a little bit curious about, can you move money from a contingency fund over to this enterprise storm water fund? Like, if it was lacking in funds, would we be able to pull from contingency ever in order to refund that? Because if that's the case, then can we move it from general fund to contingency fund? And then if, like, Lance needs that money then for the storm water, can it then be pulled over from contingency? Like, there's got to be a workaround here somehow. It doesn't make sense that the only way that we fund this, I understand this SDC funds, that makes sense because those come from those fees. But like, I'm with Counselor Ort, like, it doesn't make sense that we can't put any money other than what is on the utility bill into this one fund, that there's no other way we can transfer money in. Like, what about the ARPA funds? How do the ARPA funds make it into some of these? Like, can we use the ARPA funds for the stormwater fund? And then how do they get legally put in there? It just doesn't make sense to me. I feel like I'm just getting, like, it feels like just an automatic no because, and that's what I don't like. Like, I just kind of want more information, and I would like for us to work towards a yes somehow if it's possible. Because I just don't see a remodel being an urgent need. It's a want.
I think the majority of the ARPA fund is supposed to go to the sand bid.
The first allocation was put towards that. The second allocation, it's not been decided yet what that's going to go towards. Susanna stepped out to make a phone call to see if she can get the consultant on the phone to get the question answered for you. And like I said, with the way the motion is stated, if you want to move on it and vote, you can. And the change will be made if it's able to, and we can update you, I mean, as soon as she's got her answer.
From a rules of order perspective, can we hold that one and vote on the other two?
I don't think so. Here she comes. For you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So what happens if it wasn't possible? Then would the money automatically then go to the remodel then? Because I personally just don't want to see the remodel happen. Like, not right now. If there's a safety issue, which is what it's kind of sounding like, I don't know why the council isn't made aware of that, or the police department isn't brought in at that point if there's a safety issue. Fixing that with just like glass. Glass isn't going to keep out someone that wants to harm someone. So I just think.
So here, so if you guys can remove the project and approve to remove the project, that's easy. You just tell me to remove it, and I just remove the 25,000. I'm not comfortable making a decision for a motion to move money without checking. Oregon budget law is so picky, and I'm not comfortable as I don't have that 100 and whatever page book memorized. I can't find it easy, and Summer didn't answer the phone. So you can make the motion for me to do whatever you'd like to do as long as it meets Oregon budget law, or you could just remove that capital project. That's completely fine. And I'll just redirect and change whatever you decide tonight.
So
Counselor Hort, do you want to reword that?
So I'm just going to add on. So if you want to vote on the motion that's on the table, we can do that. And then you can follow up with potentially another motion that says, if it's not possible to transfer that money, we just remove the project from the budget. So that would be, if you don't want to see that happen this year, that's fine. That's, and that would be a way to do it so that because I was hearing concern that, okay, well, it stays there if we can't transfer the money. Does that make sense, hopefully?
Counselor Hood?
Alyssa, can we, like, if I rescind my second, then can she amend the motion to add that piece in so we just have one vote?
Yeah, we can, if you want to rescind yours and she rescinds hers, and then we can just start fresh with a new motion if that's what you and Counselor Ort wish to do.
Sure. Okay. Chair Lewis, I'd like to rescind my motion, or my second.
I will rescind my motion and make a new motion that we remove the City Hall lobby remodel project for $25,000 off of the capital outlay projects, and if possible, move the money to the stormwater fund. If that is not possible, then the money just goes back to the general fund for.
Is there a second?
Counselor Hook seconds.
It's been moved and seconded.
Chair Lewis. Discussion, please.
Go ahead.
I'd like a point of clarification on what was revealed. So remodel, in my mind, it struck the same chord that it did with Councilor Hook when you guys were talking about it. But now that you're saying it's a security issue, is there something we can do to just address the security issue and not call it a remodel? Because the remodel has a connotation that we're doing the entire thing over again. Yeah, so can we just get a point of clarification on that? And that $25,000, was that a bid? How did we come up with that money to make that security change?
So I did have a contractor come out and take a look and give me an idea, and it came up with 17,000 for it. So I just budgeted high in case, because we have to take it to bid because it's over $10,000. And we're literally looking at restructuring that counter. Right now, there's a desk that blocks the one side of the counter to go where my staff sits, and the other side is just an open space. So it would close those two spaces off, and then add that top part where it's kind of like a bank, where it has that protective part there. So just since COVID, we've just had some more angry people, and we've been pushing that panic button more in the last year than we did the whole 3 years I've been here, or even before, because even before the panic button was barely pushed. And in part of that restructuring the counter, it's actually moving the panic button to where we actually take payments now, because now where we take the payments, the panic button is actually all the way on the other side of the counter and around on that table. That's kind of the we're using as a barrier. So all of that remodeling that front, for lack of better words, is just restructuring that counter and that safety space.
Other discussion?
I would have liked to have heard about this issue. If this was a serious safety issue, I would have liked to hear about this before now, and gotten some more clarification on what this project entailed.
Go ahead.
I would love to see this be handled more with like the council. The council has the ability to approve projects like this anyway, and to hear a little bit more on it, because it sounds like it's a lot more complex than just a remodel. And I'm with Councilor Quigley that naming it a remodel has a different type of stigma to it. Whereas if we were calling it a security improvements or something like that, and we had, some type of data that shows that this actually makes it more secure. Because again, glass isn't going to keep just anybody out. Like, what kind of actual security is this? Were there arrests made on these people? Were they 86th from the property? Are they not allowed to come back? Like, what? There's so many questions that I have at this point. Calling it a remodel, I'm just not comfortable with. And I, as a counselor, personally, I would love to see this more come to the council, and I would welcome that discussion of, if we need security upgrades, let's definitely do that. But let's not call it a remodel, and let's not have the budget committee approve a remodel that's actually a security upgrade.
Other discussion? Mr. Mayor?
It's over 10,000. I think it has to go to council, right?
Yeah. You have to do something different.
Chair Lewis.
Counselor Quigley?
I'd like to call for the question since there's a motion and a second on the table.
Okay. Let's call for the question.
Sure. Tim? Hold on, I'm working backwards this time. Mayor Porter? Counselor Patty?
No.
Counselor Quigley?
No.
Brent?
No.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Luke?
Abstain.
Counselor Hook?
Yes.
And Ralph?
Can I ask just one question at this point?
No, sorry.
Then yes.
Okay. Motion fails 4-3 with 2 abstentions.
Chair Lewis, this is Counselor Patty.
Yes, sir.
I think I would like to see this return to city council at some point, just to hear a little bit more about this and the progress upgrades, and maybe if there are other facilities within the city that need these type of security improvements. I just think these need to be on our radar at this point.
Chair Lewis?
Counselor Ort?
I have a question for Lance. For the sanitary sewer collection on Ida Street, the Marion County grant, how long do we have that for?
I know, I'm sorry. Hopefully until the end of August and the project will be done. However, the actual term limit for it, I do not have the final contract from Marion County yet, so I couldn't tell you that. Generally, they give you about a year if any of the other ARPA grants are, it's very similar to that, so.
Okay.
And I want to make it clear that that grant is specifically for that project. I couldn't move it around even if I tried.
If I remember correctly, also when we applied, they gave us certain categories that the project had to be in, right?
All ARPA funds that are given to any city municipality within the country, there are rules what you can use those for. And you can't even apply for, well, you can, but you're not going to even be looked at. Infrastructure, sanitary sewer, storm, water. I believe it's like internet services, but streets, you can't use them for streets. And so there's a category of projects that you can use it for. Fortunately, the sanitary sewer project, we can, and which is why I applied.
And can I just have a follow-up comment about that?
Go ahead.
We, as a city council, have already been chastised by members of our community that have come forward to say that we're not, it's a perception thing, and I get that, but we are not taking care of the people in our community. There have been several people that have come forward to talk about the streets. I understand this money can't be used for the streets. But when we're talking about spending $1 million because the ARPA funds would cover the other portion of it, approximately, to upsize a wastewater system that would then allow us to develop an area so that we can have more growth. I don't think that that's prudent for us to do that at this time when we need to be kind of focusing more in on what we're doing inside the city, not necessarily trying to expand it out. When again, we have people who are saying, you're not taking care of us. Is there somewhere that we can use this money or leave it in there to use at a different time?
So I think what you're trying to get at is that we're spending sanitary sewer, besides the $500,000 of ARPA funds, we're spending $1 million for this project. What I will tell you is it's coming directly out of the sanitary sewer enterprise fund. The only thing you can spend those dollars are on sanitary sewer. That's it. We can't move them. I think that's what Susanna was trying to say.
Well, I know, but can we use them somewhere else in the city? That,
We can use them for any kind of sanitary sewer project.
okay.
This is-
So
but-
that's something that I want this budget committee to consider, is that when you were talking about where or trying to upsize this line so people can develop land so that we can put in more houses or businesses or whatever.
That's not the only reason we're doing it. What I would like to point out is that when we had the wastewater facilities master plan done 2 years ago, this is the number one job priority in this entire city, is upsizing that pipe. That's the number one thing they're saying to go do for the citizens of this town. They know all the problems that we have. And this is the project they said, you need to get this thing done. And I just brought up development because no one can do it. You want to go build a house down there, you couldn't do it. We'd have to say no. And that'd be for someone who lives here already. If they just wanted to build a house next to the one they have, we'd have to say no. So building that line isn't just for a developer to come in. I think that's what you're envisioning, is a developer comes in and they build 60 houses and they leave.
I feel
And
like
that's probably what-
I
and
feel
that's
like
probably-
that's what you said yesterday. So
Well, I know,
that's what I'm
and
basing
what-
this off of.
And what I guess what I'm saying is that probably will occur. But that's not the only reason to upsize that. We have manholes on First Street that back up and sewer can come right out, right now. They'll just come out of the sewer we'll just come right out of the manholes and go out into First Street. And that's why we're having to upsize that line, to prevent that from happening. There are other benefits for it. Whether you look at development as a benefit to the city or not, it is a benefit because it's a tax base, and it provides housing, whether that's low-income housing or what. That depends on our planning and things like that. But we've been talking about low-impact housing or low-income housing for a while. We don't have any land to do it. So this is a great opportunity, perhaps, to use some of that land for that. So it does benefit the city.
Thank you.
And you were talking about being chastised by the citizens. I think if the citizens have sewer on First Avenue, you will really get chastised.
Well, I thank you for that clarification, because that was,
Chair Lewis.
never mind.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a motion to remove that $25,000 for the remodel from that area of the budget and place it into contingency, period.
Is there a second?
I wasn't sure what the motion was. Can you repeat it, Counselor Hook?
The motion is to remove the $25,000 for the remodel and just place it over into contingency. Then we can do whatever later.
Is contingency a good place for it to go? Okay.
Second.
So we have.
Yeah, that's where it goes when you're balancing the budget and you're saving it for future.
So,
Go ahead, Luke.
I'm uncomfortable with removing it, and I'm also kind of uncomfortable with spending it as it stood. That's kind of why I abstained. I didn't really fall on either side. I do feel that if it's a safety concern, it needs to be addressed quickly and efficiently, as quickly and efficiently as the city can move. But I also don't want to just throw money at solving a imaginary problem. And so I'm not, wherever it lands, I do believe it needs needs at least some council consideration. And I don't want to stop it from being able to happen if it really needs to happen, but I also don't want to approve it if it's not. Because there is information that we can't have an open meeting at this point.
It's completely okay to remove it. We can move the panic button and do other things at this time. It's completely fine to remove it. So don't struggle that hard. It's okay.
Counselor Hood.
I also wanted to agree with what the mayor had said too. If it's something that the new city manager is able to address without council consideration, I'm fine with that too. Like, I just think removing it from the budget line right now and then having the new city manager address it in the most appropriate way, sounds great. It doesn't have to come to council. If
No,
that, if
'cause
it
it's
legally
under the
doesn't have to come-
50,000.
Yeah, if it legally doesn't have to come to the council, we don't need to make that decision, in my opinion, my personal opinion. But if it did need to come to council, then cool, then let's address that. But it doesn't sound like it needs to, so I say we remove it and let the new city manager make that determination, let the city do their job and move this panic button where it needs to go, where they have the freedom to do that right now. Because we do need to have panic buttons in the right places, because if the panic button isn't near you, that's a problem. And that one should be addressed immediately, in my opinion.
Mr. Mayor, did you want to talk? No.
Restate that motion, please. Somebody.
The motion was just to remove the $25,000 for the remodel and just place it over into contingency. That way they can use it, they can move it later, they can use it later. It's free for them to use, however they can legally use it for things like this in the future. It's not saying, no, don't do that. It's just saying, let's not put it as a line item or an item in the budget right here. They have the freedom to do that later, all on their own.
Go ahead, Luke.
Regarding the moving of the, I'm not sure if I should talk while they're talking. Regarding the moving of the panic button, how quickly will that happen? No matter, if we do decide to move it out of there, how quickly would the panic button get moved? Would it wait for the new city manager, or would that?
No, I just have to find out how much it is and see if there's enough left in the current budget to do it, or if I have to bring a budget change. I would have to just find out what that's going to cost and make sure it doesn't entail it's going to be changing the whole system, because the whole alarm system is getting outdated badly. So moving the button may result in just doing an entire redoing of our alarm system, which we've been debating because we're having a lot of trouble with the whole system. So, and if that happens, I have to bring it back as a budget for next fiscal year on updating the alarm system.
Okay. Anything else?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Would it have to wait until next fiscal year, or could you bring that to council and say, personally, I think an alarm system is kind of a big deal. Like, maybe not plate and glass on there, but having a panic button for every single staff member when you're a government official or a government employee is important, especially when you're working with the public. So does it have to wait until next
With the
fiscal year?
time constraints of the fact that you have barely over 30 days left of the fiscal year, the chances of pulling something together in that short is probably not going to happen.
Oh, you mean like, it would still be with this budget that we're working with? I thought you were meaning like the next budget. I'm like, that's a long time.
No, it would be, it would go in the one we're about to adopt. To get it done in the current fiscal year that ends for '22, or right, this, I don't think we can get it accomplished by July. Getting the alarm system changed would have to happen in FY '23, the one that you're sitting here to approve.
Awesome, thank you for the clarification.
So let's vote.
And you can change the 25,000. I mean, you could change the 25,000 to an new alarm system.
Okay.
It sounds like the city manager can do that.
We're getting cameras.
Yeah. Okay, so, here, sorry, I'm running out of columns on my paper. Okay. I'll go down this side over here. So are we ready to vote? Was that what we're moving? Sorry. Okay, Ralph,
Yes.
Counselor Hook,
Yes.
Luke,
Yes.
Counselor Ort,
Yes.
Brent,
No.
Counselor Quigley,
No.
Counselor Patty,
No.
Mayor Porter, Tim.
No.
Oh, boy, okay. Motion fails 5-4.
Chair Lewis,
Go ahead.
so just for clarification, we're just going to leave a remodel on there and let them spend it how they want.
Is that what you all are thinking?
We're going to have plate and glass there in the Like, they're just going to go forward with that when it isn't necessary. Put a division between the community and the public servants that are working there when we don't have any data that shows that anything dangerous is happening, and, you know, we aren't considering any alarm system instead, or a survey of how to actually make it more safe. Like, that's what I just don't get. We're gonna spend $25,000 on a remodel that's gonna put more division between city staff and the people at the main office, but Public Works doesn't have plate and glass and
So
barriers.
can I make a suggestion? I can do all of it and leave the glass off because the rest of it really needs to be done, if that helps.
Go ahead.
Chair Lewis, I think Counselor Quigley has a motion he'd like to make.
Go ahead.
Let me see what I rephrase this. My understanding was it was going to come to council regardless of what we did. So I'd like to make a motion that this particular topic comes to the next council meeting to make a determination.
Can I suggest maybe not the next council meeting?
Sorry, that'd be Monday. Before the end of the fiscal year.
So we have a motion?
Chair Lewis, this is Counselor Petty, I second that.
Go ahead.
It was just stated that it didn't need to come to council because it's not $50,000, like over $50,000. So council doesn't need to have it come to them. And I agree with the mayor in saying that if the council doesn't need to make this staff day-to-day operation decision, and it can be made by the city manager, we should put that in the city manager's hands, especially since we just hired a city manager. I would hate for us to start taking over decisions that aren't ours to really take over, and leave our decision-making to the things that they actually need help making a decision on. I just think that the plan for this money isn't necessarily a full-fledged idea that should be committed to right now. That's all.
Chair Lewis.
Counselor Patty?
Thank you, sir. I just want to go ahead and say, part of what my guidance to staff was earlier is that we also look at other facilities if there are necessary security improvements like this. And I feel like, based on the $25,000 amount, that could amount to over the delegation limit for the city manager. So I'm just kind of curious. I would like to hear back on it at a council meeting, just as an update, so that we can make a decision as a body. And based on the feedback from committee member Cranston, I think that that's kind of where you were at too. You want to see some guidance on this, and that's where I'm coming from, Councilor Hook. I hear you on that, but just based on the amount of robust discussion tonight, I think this is something that needs to return to us.
So I can do that. I can find out what other cities are doing, wait for Julia to start, go over what we find, talk to her about what we've been dealing with, and figure out the best way to restructure the front that's going to be efficient for staffing as well as safety. And that's completely doable. And you leave the budget as is and move forward from that direction. That makes perfect sense.
Sounds good. Thank you. I'll rescind my motion then.
I will rescind my second.
So noted. So do we have a new motion? Luke?
I have a question, kind of backing up to the $15,000. We're not doing that, right? Approving that?
Correct. Correct. We're not doing that.
Just wanted to make sure. I didn't know if we needed to vote on that or if that was, I know it didn't really sound like it was moving anywhere, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't. Okay.
Chairman Lewis, if there's no further discussion, I move we accept the budget as written.
Is there a second?
On your agenda, there is a sentence. We wrote out the specific motions we need for the good old Oregon budget law. So sorry.
First one that's listed there under.
Yes,
conclude
those,
and vote?
on your agenda where it says conclude and vote, you're going to see several different motions that we will need to make to move forward tonight.
So do you want to just read that, Brian?
Sure. Consider approval of the proposed 2022-23 fiscal year budget.
Should he read that in the amount of?
Yeah, with the dollar amount, please.
To approve 2022-23 fiscal year budget in the amount of 30,900 to 600 as presented. Consider approved levying the city's statutory.
Oh,
permit.
we have to do these each as separate. So just the first one, you got that one, and we just need a second.
So is there a second?
I'll second.
So it's been moved and seconded?
Yeah, it's okay.
Go ahead.
I'm going to be a no vote this evening because of quite a few different areas that I've already expressed concern over how we're spending. I just think that we could be using some of those dollars in different places, so that's why I will be a no vote this evening.
All right. So let's vote.
I'll go ahead and just poll, if that's okay with you, Ralph.
Yeah.
Ralph?
Yes.
Counselor Hook?
No.
Luke?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
No.
Brent?
Yes.
Counselor Quigley?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Mayor Porter? Tim?
Yes.
Motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 2.
Chair Lewis.
Yes, sir.
Just a consideration, the budget in its entirety will still come before council for final ratification, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so we would still have an opportunity at that time to make adjustments or state our piece?
Yes.
Thank you.
Chair Lewis,
Yes.
for clarification, the last time that this came before council and we wanted to make suggestions or changes to it, we were basically told that if we didn't do this, if we didn't approve it this meeting or that meeting, that we would be out of compliance, and basically told that it's either you approve this budget, and the time to do that was at budget committee, or like the city's just gonna not be able to function. So is that gonna be the case at our next meeting? Are we gonna have time to make revisions if we want to? Because Counselor McDonald may have some insight as well. Well, I know that there's a hard cutoff date, but you were saying that that this isn't the last time we can have this discussion, and I'm saying this is pretty much the last time we can have this discussion. Even though there's the perception that we have more time to have this discussion with the council.
Susanna, what's the hard date? What's the absolute end date that the budget can be passed?
That would be June 30th, would be the absolute.
But you have to have enough time to get the newspaper out and the LB1 and all that stuff too, so.
Yeah, well, yeah, we wouldn't want to wait until June 30th. We've done that one year. So we're getting clarification. I believe that was the former city manager who had made the statement about considering, and I'm trying to remember back, forgive me. I believe that it was his statement that you're referring to, Counselor Orton, Counselor Hook.
I don't recall that statement, so it wasn't in my time. I will
Yeah.
offer that in the budget training that I received 2 months ago, city council that doesn't pass the budget is personally liable for any expenses after the fact, and I'm not willing to do that. So I will resign before that happens. So that's imperative. It's really important for us to clarify this and make sure we have enough time to make modifications to it.
Well, if I'm understanding, you're talking about maybe just throwing, so not making a change at the council to say, remove the $25,000. You're making those sorts of changes to the details of the budget. Is that correct? Is that what you're?
I want to make sure that if the hard deadline is June 30th, and this still has to come before council be ratified, that the council has ample opportunity to change anything or discuss before that deadline. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Council okay with that, or?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Three more meetings.
I'm with
They can do
council
it.
quickly on this. I want ample time as well. I don't want it to be a thing of like, we have a council meeting, we have to make that decision tonight, and then we get there and we get someone saying, well, I don't have the answer. And so then we're forced into making a decision because we don't have the answer, and so we have to just go with it. That's where I don't want to be again. And I remember being there and feeling almost like, it felt like I was being strong-armed into this decision because there was no time to make changes because we had waited until there should be 2 council meetings. There should be one where the budget comes to us, then there's time for city staff to get the answers, because it's also not fair on city staff to say, know exactly what question we're going to have and answer it right on the spot. That's not fair either. So having the ability to have a city council meeting where we go over it, we ask questions, give the staff time to answer those questions if they don't know the answer right away, and then come back again and vote on it if we need to. Just having that space would be great.
So from a scheduling perspective, what's the last date that they could have, considering,
For
announcements and that sort of thing?
Right. For regularly scheduled council meetings, it would be, there's June 6th, and then I believe it's June 20th is the second meeting in June for the council. And there's a public hearing for the budget and for the state shared revenues. Susanna's double checking. I don't want to speak and say, of course you can make changes when we get to the council meeting and be incorrect. I believe that's why it goes through this and there, like it's a double, so it makes sense to me that once it gets to the council that you could potentially make changes to the budget, but I just can't say for sure at this moment that that is the case.
That's the way I understand it, so.
So since we've approved it, then it makes sense that it would go to council on the June 6th meeting. They
And-
would make their changes. You would come back on the 20th, and they would vote on them. And you're still within timeframes.
Or they could
But
just
is
vote
there
on
enough
it on the
time?
6th with the changes.
With the changes, that's, well, that's what we're verifying, right?
Right.
Meeting. Don't we have another?
As long as that's the only agenda item on the council, on the agenda for that particular meeting, I'm good with it.
I think it's close to being the only agenda item for that. Thinking,
On June 6th.
yeah, I am digging here, right, into my,
Go ahead. Oh, Mr. Mayor.
Is there anything going on in the last May meeting?
that's next week. We have to have the,
Okay, so basically we're down to the two June meetings to get,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there are legal requirements for advertising, putting out the budget into the newspaper, and, yeah, at least 10 days prior to the meeting.
Can we have this like consultant scheduled and available like during that meeting so that we have access to that budget law stuff right away?
I can have that to you before, I can get that to you before even Monday's council.
No, I mean, no, not for that, but like if we come up with other questions, having someone on standby that we, or not standby, but someone that we're paying or something like that, where we can get those budget questions answered right away at council right then.
We
Is there
we
something
can
do?
certainly reach out to her and see if she has that availability.
Yeah, because I think that would help, because then we wouldn't need a second meeting, we'd have the answers right away for a lot of those things that we're curious about.
Yes.
Here, it's right here.
Chair Lewis, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Oh, we have a motion on the table.
Oh, sorry.
We haven't voted, sorry, right?
Yeah,
No,
voted it.
no, you were right. I'm sorry. We
Go ahead.
had so much conversation.
Council Patty?
Yeah, I was unaware of the motion, but, well,
No,
thank you.
there is none.
So
I made
would
that
like
up
to make a
in my
motion
head.
To approve levying the city's statutory permanent tax rate of 3.3280 of taxable assessed value.
It's been moved and seconded. We approve statutory permanent tax rate?
It's law. That's why we have to levy all of these.
We've always had to do that.
Then
If
we
you
would,
don't get the money?
we wouldn't get the money.
So, and that would take care of the 25,000. You would-
That'll
get
get,
it.
take care of the whole city, you're done. That's,
Sure,
Go ahead.
sure.
Vote.
Okay. Ralph?
Yes.
Counselor Hook?
Yes.
Luke?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Counselor Quigley?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Mayor Porter? Tim?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 9-0. You
Sure.
don't have to count on that one.
Go ahead. Councilor Quigley.
I'd like to offer a motion to consider approving levying the city's local tax rate of 50 cents per 1,000 of taxable assessed value for recreation, in parentheses, parks and pool.
Chair Lewis, this is Counselor Patty. I second that motion.
So it's been moved and seconded. So go ahead, we're voting again.
All right. Ralph?
Yes.
Counselor Hook?
Yes.
Luke?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Counselor Quigley?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Mayor Porter?
Yes.
And Tim.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 9-0.
With that, I think we're done. huh?
No, there are two more motions
Chairman Lewis.
on the next page.
Go ahead.
Chair Lewis, I'd like to make a motion to approve levying the city's local option tax rate of 40 cents per $1,000 of taxable assessed value for the Stayton Public Library.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded that we levy the city's local option tax of 40 cents per thousand.
Ready?
So go ahead. We're going to vote.
I'll switch it up this time. Tim?
Yes.
Mayor Porter? Yes. Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Counselor Quigley?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Luke?
Yes.
Counselor Hook?
Yes.
And Ralph?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Counselor Lewis,
Yes, sir.
Chair Lewis. I'd like to offer a motion to consider approval of receipt of and uses of state shared revenues.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve receipt of the state shared revenues.
All right.
We're ready to vote.
All right. Ralph?
Yes.
Counselor Hook?
Yes.
Luke?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Counselor Quigley?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Mayor Porter? Tim?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0. Did you have something to say?
yes. And I think the answer's right there, if you want to glance real quick, because there's the steps and there's the adoption. Okay, so I did get a chance, so I want to give you some clarification about transfers. You need to understand in the beginning when I told you about all the different buckets and all the different rules and what funds fit under which funds, okay? The general fund is property tax dollars. That's the biggest majority of it. And it's the other taxes, right? Your state revenue sharing. That's taxpayers' dollars. When you want to take a taxpayer's dollar and transfer it to an enterprise fund, that is not okay, because then you're telling the taxpayers that may not have that you're wanting their taxpayer dollars to go to an enterprise fund, when an enterprise fund is supposed to be a business and you're supposed to collect the fees in order to sustain the service, and that your people paying their utility bills are paying for the service that they're receiving. So they're very, very different, and that's why taking from the general fund to an enterprise fund is frowned upon. When you're talking about transferring to a pool and a library, the taxpayers are using those facilities, in the parks, they're using those facilities, and that's more what a taxpayer who's paying those property taxes and those other taxes would want. So that's why in the beginning of the budget, I talk about those different buckets and the rules that go with it. So that I apologize again to you, Jordan, because I wasn't clicking when you were talking about transferring dollars to an enterprise fund. I guess it just didn't click when you asked me. And I didn't know you were going to bring a motion, because if I would have known that too, then I could have double checked. Because Oregon budget law is very complicated, and I don't want to just make decisions without 100% trusting the answer, because I don't work that way. So I did get a chance to talk to Summer and clarify that. And that's why I had this little way. I don't think that's how it goes. And that's why. So I hope that helps you understand that part. And then we did find the other part in the actual manual.
Do you want me to? So in regard to making changes at the council level, once it goes to, say, June 6th, when it comes before you, it says the governing body may make changes in the approved budget before it is adopted. Before the beginning of the fiscal year to which it relates, the governing body can also make changes to the adopted budget. However, if the governing body wants to make any of the following changes, they must first publish a revised notice of budget hearing and financial summary and hold another public hearing. If the governing body increases taxes over the amount approved by the budget committee, if the governing body increases estimated expenditures in a fund over the amount approved by the budget committee by more than $5,000 or 10%, whichever is greater, and if the governing body increases estimated expenditures in a fund in a biennial budget, which wouldn't actually even, we're not biennial. So it will just depend on what the change is. And if there is a change that's made greater than that 10% or $5,000, whichever is greater, it would probably be the 10%, most likely. Yeah. So we can get that specific on, it'll just depend, I guess, what the change is, but we can do it. And if we do it and it falls into one of those three categories, we would have to just hold another hearing, which would require that extra notice. And so it may have to be a special session depending on timing and everything getting into the newspaper.
Thank you for that clarification. I do have one more question. How do you get money into the enterprise fund? You're saying the only way, so
Yes.
how many houses that pay taxes in the city don't have streets, sewer, or water? Because
So-
all of the, you have to have that in order to have a house.
The enterprise funds need to be done by rates or finding grants to get the needs met. So I would say at this point, I would table what to do with rates, since we are doing the rate study. But an enterprise fund is supported by the rates that are paid, that are collected from the people using the utilities. And the other options is using grant funds to help meet the needs, which is why we're going to bring ARPA back to discuss on what projects would take some pressure off of those funds. The ARPA is will make a huge difference.
I mean, I'm just going to say that I'm not interested in raising any rates until we talk about more grant funding, so that's all I got.
Chair Lewis.
Yes, sir.
I just want to thank citizen members of the Budget Committee. This is pretty esoteric stuff for even the council. I think it's a great insight as to what the inner workings of the city is, and you all can help us when we get yelled at because we're doing things the wrong way. We'll say, well, just come sit on the Budget Committee one time. You'll find out what we're doing.
Exactly. Or for that, any other board that we have in this city that virtually nobody has anything to do with except us, so to speak.
So I am 3 years in here at the city, and this is my first city, and Oregon is very particular. And I am really a stickler for following the rules. So I hope you're patient with me as I'm still learning and confirming and bringing back to you what I'm comfortable is the facts, because I don't want to bring any liability issues to the city if I said, yes, we can do it, and then find out Oregon was like, nope, and they pull something from us. So reading that line by line, I feel good about that part, but I mean, I'm just very cautious because I don't want to lose any funding by making a mistake and not following the rules.
So that being said, I wonder, your consultant, would it be reasonable to have that person come to these meetings or to the city council so that you have that kind of in your back pocket if something comes up? I mean, is that
Well, I can ask her to come on the next budget one, to have her come to all of them, that's could be difficult. But that's kind of why I asked for you guys give me questions prior so I can find out and ask her. Some of our training from her got derailed due to COVID and many other things. So, but she has been helping me along the way. But yes, I can request her to see if she can come to that one, at least virtually.
I just want to add one more thing of just thanking the department heads and the finance department for all their hard work on this budget. It was a lot of hours and a lot of work, and we appreciate your grace with errors that we found along the way. And just thank you, everybody.
So should we go home? Let's go home.